get officially started in about 2 minutes, but for those who are here already, I'd love to hear, how's the Law Firm Growth Summit been going so far? Has anybody attended another session other than this one?
I've caught bits and pieces of other sessions. It's been great,
Good.
but I know this is going to be the best session of the conference.
Yep, I definitely didn't pay Mitchell to say that. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's awesome. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, what I've seen, same thing. I don't know why my calendar's been really crazy this time around, but what I've seen, it's been pretty awesome. This is the best one I've seen so far. So I think there are ways of purchasing the recordings if you're missing them and you want to see stuff later. So I don't get anything for saying that. I just know it's a pretty sweet opportunity. So if you're looking for that, that'd be great. So we are approaching 1:45 and 30 seconds. But before we jump into this, I guess, if you have any, questions or comments, or you can't hear me, or the screen is weird, like, don't be afraid to unmute yourself and tell me what's going on. Or if I'm going too quick, or, something doesn't seem clear, I'm 100% okay with you interacting with this presentation. This is not just something I want to hear my own voice for 45 minutes straight. And Ty Lynn said it's been awesome too. I'm going to put the chat over here. So if you see me looking over here, I'm just checking that chat so I can see it. And there we go. It's 1:45. So awesome. Thank you guys for being here today. We're going to jump right on time. Like I said, you can watch the recording later if you're not here on time, but this is a topic I'm pretty passionate about. And it's kind of that, what do you do at the beginning of your career, right? What do you do to generate that first $250,000 a year without spending a ton of money on ads or spamming your friends on social media? There's nothing more frustrating than you have that old friend from high school, and all of a sudden, they haven't talked to you in 20 years. And then all of a sudden they like hit you up and start messaging you. And then 3 or 4 messages in, they're like, oh, by the way, I'm selling this awesome essential oil or whatever it is that they've been wrapped into on an MLM. And you're like, man, this wasn't an actual friendship thing. This was just being hit up on social media because they wanted to sell me something. And I don't want to be that person. I find that obviously it's not a super effective way. You just burn bridges when you do it, but it also kind of ruins that reputation. Now, as a lawyer, we also have that added complexity of you can't, outbound to do sales calls or anything like that. So you have to be careful, especially in each jurisdiction, what is and isn't allowed. So it can be kind of tricky when you're starting your firm. And I find a lot of people hit plateaus along the way, especially between 0 and 250,000. There's plateaus of either they're working really hard and they're still not making enough money, but they're not making enough money to hire someone, and they kind of get stuck. And so my goal and my mission as a coach and as an attorney is to help people pass this, get past that, past the 250,000, really past the 500,000. My individual goal for most of my coaching clients is $10,000 a week, which is about 500,000 a year. And I find that seems to be a good point where you can start building a really good team. You can start building out the marketing and stuff that you want, and you can scale your business to whatever you want it to be. And if you get nothing else out of this entire call, I hope it's that you know that what you want is possible. And so if you want a lifestyle where you're playing 20 hours of video games a week at work, I can help you get there. It is very possible. I have personally can attest that that is not a very satisfying lifestyle. I did it for a little while and definitely stopped doing it. But if that's something you want, you can do it. I've seen Sierra go from 0 to 500,000 in her very first year of business. Spencer, who was working 60 to 80 hours a week, his original goal was to golf every Friday. So we built out a schedule that allowed him to do that. But ultimately, he turned it into an opportunity where while golfing, he met some other real estate investors and was able to turn in the time that he bought back in his life into a real estate investing company where he'll make more money doing that than he was doing in his law firm. And so really the opportunities are limitless there. You can achieve whatever it is you want. This is just the foundation on how to get there. To get there first, you got to make some money and you got to have some time. And so we're going to talk about those money things today. Really, the agenda for this is just super simple. There are 3 reasons you are not making enough money. And I want to talk about those 3 reasons and specifically how to fix it. I'm a very simple person. I don't get super fancy. And I need to break things down into their most simple form in order to understand them. So don't be surprised if everything is like third grade level, because that's what I need to understand, but hopefully it's helpful for you guys as well. So what are those 3 reasons? What is it that's stopping you from making money? And if you know, I would love to hear what your thoughts are in the chat. Before I go to the next slide, if you guys have like 30 seconds to put in the chat, what do you think are at least one of the 3 reasons that are stopping you from making enough money? Leads. Admin to take over the $10 an hour tasks. Clients not valuing the services enough to pay invoices. Man, you'd think I'd planted these answers. This is awesome. I'll give you like 10 more seconds. Qualified leads. Good. Good. You can keep putting them in the chat. We'll keep going forward, but I'll read them as they come out. Poor time management. This is awesome. So there really are 3 things. And the number one thing people tell me is leads. I would say almost 80% of the attorneys that I talk to, they tell me that their number one issue is not having enough leads. And I'll tell you from experience, both in my own practice, but also coaching hundreds of attorneys at this point, that leads is often not the number one issue that's stopping you from making enough money. The first thing is that you're not solving big enough problems. And someone put in here, clients not valuing services enough to pay invoices. That was a really good answer, because you're absolutely right. We are not in the business of selling divorce or green cards or DUIs or whatever your practice area is, right? We are in the business of solving problems, and people value those problems at a certain amount. And where we get into issues as attorneys is we say, I'm an estate planning attorney. I'm a criminal defense attorney, and my billable hour is $300 an hour or $400 an hour or $200 an hour. And they don't see the connection between why am I paying you $200 an hour and what problem is that being solved? Now, sometimes this is easier than others, right? Like I do family law with my law firm, and it's really easy if someone calls me up and says, hey, my ex just filed for divorce, I need to get divorced, right? We know that divorce needs to happen. But what we don't know is, why do they want it? Maybe they don't want the divorce, or maybe they do want the divorce, but they want it because they want to protect their kids. Or maybe they don't want to get divorced and they're really scared about how they're going to financially make ends meet. There's a lot more to just, I want to get divorced on this problem thing. The better you understand someone's problem, the easier it is going to be for you to solve it. Now, this is twofold here. The better you understand someone's problem, you can actually solve the problem for them, right? You can help them through these issues, but you can also communicate that to them, which is how you get people valuing your services enough to pay them. And you're absolutely right. Spoiler alert, number 2 is not getting paid for the services you're rendering. So we're going to talk about that more, but the value is what's so important here. I was just talking to another colleague who was talking about somebody who wanted to hire their VA services, and they had this issue that he couldn't solve it the way that they wanted to solve it. And, so he's like, okay, I just can't have this client. I was like, well, hold on. Like, yeah, you can't give them the solution they asked for, which was like a background check. I was like, but you can solve that concern of ensuring that that trust factor is there before they get the keys to the kingdom. And we talked about how to do that, right? And that's what we really want to do here, is you want to start understanding your client's pain points. And so, in immigration, for example, someone getting deported is scary, but it's scary because they could lose the ability to ever see their kids again. I have a good friend from high school that will not see his kids while they are minors because he got deported and can't come back to the United States for like 20 years or something. I'm not an immigration attorney. If that's the wrong number, don't hang me there. So he was really scared about never seeing his kids again, right? That was the pain point. And that pain point is worth something to him. It was worth quite a bit to him. And so I helped him with his divorce, working out ways in which his kids could come see him where he was, where he'd been deported to, was super, super important, right? And that was worth a lot of money to him. Now, luckily, I didn't charge him a ton of money, but he would have paid $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 to be able to see his kids again. No one doesn't want to see their kids for 20 years. So you have to start understanding the pain points, and the bigger the pain points, the more they're going to be willing to pay. So the short answer is solve bigger problems. I hear this a lot. This is like one of the biggest things I hear when I'm coaching people is that I can't charge X dollars. I can't charge $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000. And it's funny because I've seen it all arranged. I've seen people be like, there is no way someone would pay me $1,000 for this. And then I'll turn around and be talking to someone else for the exact same service. And they're like, there's no way someone would pay me $10,000 for this, but they're already charging $5,000. And my answer to that is always, do you own a house or do you know somebody who owns a house? Because the average home value in America is ridiculous right now. And like where I'm at, even like small homes are like at $500,000. It's ridiculous what they're going for now. I'm like, how does a plumber justifiably pay $500,000 for a home? And it's because he or she believes it's worth $500,000, right? And so someone who doesn't even know sales very well convinced them to spend $500,000 that they didn't have, by the way, to buy that. So you can't tell me that that same plumber wouldn't be willing to give you $10,000 if you could show them that it was worth it. And so it's all about value. That's why I need to scroll up and see who said that. Dominique, you saying clients not valuing services enough to pay invoices. You knew way more than you're giving yourself credit there, because it is all about the value. As long as people can see that the problems that you're solving are costing them more than the solution you're providing them, they will pay you. So for example, in my office, I do what's called a hassle-free mediation. Here in Utah, mediators who are attorneys can actually draft and file paperwork and put it in front of the court. It's not something that can be done everywhere, but it's kind of a unique thing that we can do here. And so I developed what I call hassle-free mediation. The people come in for 4 hours and they each pay $975. So it's $1,950 total. On average, the people from the day they call our office to the day they're divorced is less than 2 weeks. So I know that divorce is complicated. It's expensive. The average divorce in Utah is $9,000 each, and it's slow. The average divorce takes 11 months. So when I'm communicating this to people, I'm telling them, hey, you have a $9,000 problem, and I will solve it for $975. It's a no-brainer, right? Who wouldn't, if they know it's going to cost them $9,000 and they have to pay to get divorced, who wouldn't pay $975 for that? And oh, by the way, it's going to take you on average 11 months, and I can solve it in 2. Now, there's specific elements that they have to meet to qualify for this hassle-free mediation, but everybody who qualifies, they take it every single time. It's almost no competition amongst other attorneys for this. And I use this one as an example specifically because I solved a big problem, something I knew that people charged $9,000 for, but I did it in such a way that my rate is double what the average attorney's rate is while charging less. So I didn't actually have to charge my clients more. And this is where so many people hit me and they say, man, I couldn't do that because I can't charge people more money than it's worth. And I 100% agree with that. You should never charge someone more money than it's worth. And you shouldn't just inflate your rates just to inflate your rates and make more money. But if you solve big enough problems and you do it in such a way that it's quick and affordable, you can actually make more. So in this case, these mediations are on average 4 hours. So they book out a half a day of my time. They come in, we talk through everything, and we sign a settlement agreement at the end. After that, my paralegal does the rest of the work. It's on average about 3 hours worth of work for her. But we collect $1,950. So for 4 hours of my time, we make, or less, we make about $2,000. So the average billable hour here is $250. It's really cheap where I'm at. And my average billable hour is almost $500 an hour. And so it's an awesome way of kind of looking through that and trying to solve the big problems and doing it in such a way that it's fast and affordable for your clients. You don't always have to be the cheapest option. Obviously, this is an extreme example there. But as long as you're solving big enough problems, people will pay for it. And I know most people who came here were assuming this was an advertising type thing where I was just going to talk about advertising the whole time. But I strongly feel that if you don't understand this value equation first, no amount of advertising, Google ads, whatever is going to work for you, because you're still putting the wrong message in front of the wrong people or the right people. But you have to have the right message, and it all comes back to value. So again, this is like the most important slide right here, is understanding your client's pain points and then solving those in the most efficient way that you can so that you can charge a premium for it. I feel like I'm charging a premium for what I'm doing. I'm charging twice of what an average attorney is charging, but I can do that because it costs them less. And the next point is that you're not getting paid for the work that you're doing. And people say this all the time. There's no way I can make 250,000 a year, which I call BS on, because I know you can charge $300 an hour. Even in this frugal valley that I live in, and the average being 250, I charge 350 and no one bats an eye at it. So I know you could charge $300 an hour no matter where you're at. Some areas you could charge way more than that. If you build only 4 hours a day and only 4 days a week, and most of you here, I'm assuming, are working more than 32 hours a week and only 50 weeks a year. So you're taking 2 full weeks off on top of this. You would build 240,000, almost 250. So you can work a couple extra days or charge a couple of dollars an hour more. You can get to 250 easy with that math. You work 4.1 hours, something like that. But half a day, 4 days a week with 2 weeks off, and you can get to 250,000. So the only reason you're not getting there is because you're either not charging enough, you're not getting paid for the work that you're doing, or the third one is you don't have enough clients, right? But the foundation is here. You've got to get paid for the work that you're doing. Anybody who tells me they're busy and they're not making 250,000 a year, I know it's because they're not getting paid for the work they're doing. They're either doing non-income producing activities, and some of those are important, like marketing and advertising and those types of things, free consults, whatever you end up doing, or you're not getting paid. And the average attorney only collects 68% of the hours that they work. So at the most basic form, the easiest way to solve this, and we could spend a whole day talking about how to effectively get paid for the work that you've done. But when I first started coaching, I had this little reputation for doubling people's incomes in about 30 days. And all I was doing is I knew that the average attorney only collected 2.1 hours a day for every 8 hours that they worked. And so what I did is I made them block off 4 hours a day. And the only thing they were allowed to do during those 4 hours were income producing activities. So if you billed by the hour, you had to work on cases that had money in trust. If you did flat fees, then you had to do the activities that moved you closer to collecting that flat fee. If you had the personal injury ones were always the hardest, because I swear there was thousands of things they could do, but only a few of them actually moved them closer to settlement. So we had to work on those specific activities, but you had to do income producing activities on cases that you knew were going to pay. So if someone didn't have money in trust, you weren't allowed to work on that case. And if you didn't have enough work during those 4 hours, most people do, but if you didn't have enough work, you were only allowed to do one of two things. One is the activities we're going to talk about on slide number 3. And 2 was you were allowed to call your current clients and tell them, hey, you don't have any money in your trust. I can't work on your case right now during this time of day until you put money in your trust. Can you put 500 in your trust? Because I need to do A, B, and C. And you'd be blown away how many people would be like, oh, I don't have any money in my trust and you can't work on this? Sure. And they would turn over 500, $1,000. But those were the only two things they were allowed to do other than bill. And so what would happen is most people would then collect 4 hours a day of income, and 4 is double 2. And they would think I was a genius, but I wasn't. I was just simple math of knowing that if you collected 4 hours a day, you'd make about 250,000 a year, and they would double their income. So if you're not there, my number one thing that I always have people do is, or as often as I can have people do, is just block off half of their day for working in their business, doing income producing activities, and half of their day working on their business, lead generation, whatever that is that you need to do to work on your business. That's like the foundational there. Obviously, the bigger you get, that those ratios are going to change. The bigger you get, you're actually going to work on your business even more, and in your business even less. But there will come times that you may need to work in your business more to grow from a financial standpoint. But from a foundational standpoint, half of your day on your business, half of your day in your business. And if things come up, right, court hearings come up and stuff, and a court hearing comes up during your on the business time, you move it around so that you still have half a day on your business and half a day in your business. For most people, that's going to be enough, as long as you're doing truly income producing activities to get paid for the work that you're doing. And then the third one is that you're not solving enough problems, or that you don't have enough clients, right? And so if you're solving big enough problems and you know what those are, and you're getting paid for the work, and you're still not hitting 250,000, that's when you should start thinking about leads. And I would not start thinking about leads until you are for sure and certain that you know that you're solving the right problems and you're getting paid for the work that you're doing. I see too many people that come to me and say, if I only had more leads. And when we run through it, I'm like, man, you're making 50,000 a month. Like, you should be profitable at this point. If you're not profitable at 50,000 a month, and you get more leads, you'll not be profitable at 100,000 a month. You've got to build the foundations of profitability first before you add more leads. Now, I'm 100% in agreement that more leads equals more profit if you're profitable up front and you understand how those things work. And so if you truly understand number 1 and 2, and now you're still not making a 250 or whatever your goal is, this equation is going to work, whether it's 500,000, a million, 10 million. The equation still works the same. The tools, 4 hours a day is not going to get you to 10 million, but the principles are still the same. Then you need more clients. Now the question is just how many clients do you need? The key performance indicators, the KPIs that I like to track for people who are just getting started, I like to keep it simple. There are hundreds of things that you could track, but if you're just getting started, I want to keep this simple so that you use it. Using something that's not as good is better than having something that's awesome that you don't use. And so I keep it really simple to just 3 key performance indicators. And that's how many leads are you getting? How many of those leads show up to the consultation? And what percentage of those people retain or buy at the consultation? And I do believe that if you're going to do a consultation with someone, you should at least invite them to give you money. Now, depending on the practice area and whatnot, you may or may not get that money in the first case. Obviously, personal injury, they're not giving you money, but you're still wanting them to retain you. But there needs to be a close in that consultation. You shouldn't be sending everybody home to think about it and read the representation agreement. Close them and refund them if they don't like your representation agreement, but take the money. So those are the 3 things: how many leads, how many show up, and how many buy. If you don't know your percentages right now, a standard industry average is about a 50% close rate, 90% show up rate. So depending on how many leads you need, right? If you're wanting to make 250,000 a year, you need about $5,000 per week. And so if you're selling $5,000 services, you only need 1 person. If you're selling $1,000 services, you need 5. So you'll have to run the numbers, but you'll need about 2 to 3 leads per week for each client that you want to have. So if you know those, the real question is, how do we fix all of this? If we have these 3 problems, if we've identified which of these 3 problems is truly your issue, the question is, how do we fix it? And the simplest way I can put that is to just have more conversations. You need to be having conversations with your ideal client, and those conversations are 3 parts. The first part is about their problems. So many people don't do this the right way. They talk about how awesome they are, or the medals that they won, or all the plaques that they have on the wall, right? But they don't actually talk about the client's problems. And so that's why I say this is a 40-20-40 thing. The first 40 is all about them, asking questions, understanding the problems that they have. Then the middle 20% is about how you solve them. And it is a little bit there in the middle, but you do need to tell them, like, hey, I provide mediation services. I provide litigation services. In my one-liner here, right? It's we provide flat fee mediation and litigation services. That's the how. And then the end result, you want to turn it back on them. And this time it's the outcome that they want. This is the positive. You've started with the negative, you've explained how, and now you end with the positive. From a copywriting standpoint, this is kind of an interesting thing. When I shared this on Facebook today, as I was brainstorming this, I was blown away with how many people told me to not be so negative. And I thanked them for their advice, and then I ignored it. And that's because a story doesn't begin until there's opposition to the antagonist, right? And so, or the protagonist. So, for example, if I tell you the story of I woke up this morning and then I made my cup of coffee, and then I looked out the window and saw that the sun was out, and then I got dressed, and then I came to work, and then I started working on my PowerPoint presentation, and then, you're all sitting there waiting for the story to start, right? It is technically a story. There's somebody doing things, but it is super boring and no one cares. No one would watch that on YouTube. No one would want to know about that. It doesn't matter. Now, if I tell you a story of how I looked out the window and someone in a black hood is looking back at me, right? That's something that's interesting. You would want to hear about that story more, but people need to know the problems. And so you're not being negative by talking about someone's problems. You're helping them say, because some people don't have this, right? Like the my beginning is divorce sucks. So if you were happily married, don't read on. You don't care, right? But if you're not happily married, or your ex just served you with divorce papers, this is going to hook you. It's going to hook your ideal client. And so I'm super informal. Like I said, I keep things super basic. And so my one liner, right? My statement of this conversation is divorce sucks, but it doesn't have to be expensive and time consuming, because I know that cost and time are two of the biggest concerns for my ideal client. My ideal client may be different, but that's what my ideal client is struggling with. And now I'm talking about the how. We provide flat fee mediation and litigation services. Short, sweet, and to the point. Do I explain how I do those things? No, because they don't need to know that. They just need to know that I'm an attorney and I can solve their problems. And then I'm back to talking about them. So that, I like the so that statement because it makes it very clear that we're about to talk about them again. You quickly resolve the conflict and get back to what matters most. That phrase, what matters most, is again something that's super important to me. Everything I do through my coaching program, through my law firm, through all of the different ventures that I'm a part of, it's all about helping people focus on what matters most to them. For me, that's traveling with my family, spending time with them, being at my son's track meet tomorrow. Those types of things are what are most important to me. Or someone who's 22 and single, maybe the thing that's most important to them is going to school and getting a good job. And so we all have different things that are important to us, and that's what's important. That's part of my mission, and that's why it's here. Your statement could be very, very different than this, but as long as you do the focus of your ideal client's problem first, how you solve that problem in the middle, and then the end result, the outcome that they're looking for, that's the message that you want to share. And this can be one sentence long. It can be a paragraph long. It can be, an hour-long video. You can break this into what you need to, but you need to have that conversation frequently. And that's where I say share your message 5 times a day. And for people who are trying to get started and they're trying to figure this out, the only way you're going to learn is by doing. And so you've got to share your message. For example, I started a YouTube channel recently. And I know I'm not good at video. That's not my strong suit. And I know it's going to take me some time to learn it. So I started a YouTube channel and I started recording videos. And I figure I might as well figure this out and do 100 to 200 crappy videos initially before everybody starts watching them, right? Before my audience is so big that they're like, what is going on? But every time I create a video, they get better and better, and I get better at it. And the only way I'm going to get better is to create more videos. Well, the same thing is true about you sharing your message. When you're starting out, honestly, the best way to share your message is face-to-face or a text message or something where you can get automatic feedback to see if it's working or see if it's not working. Long-term, you're going to share your message through different avenues, right? You may do Google ads. You may have a fancy website. You may do, a big social media campaign, right? But the core of all of those things is still sharing your message. If you're dancing on camera and making a fool of yourself, yes, you could get a bunch of views on your social media, but you're not solving your ideal client's problems, and they're not going to call you. It's a great way of staying front of mind. That's a branding thing that you can do. But at the end of the day, the purpose of your website, the purpose of your Google My Business page, the purpose of everything that you do on marketing wise, it should be to get clients, to make money. And in order to do that, you've got to be sharing your message. So first is create that message. Start with one sentence and then build it out from there. I like starting with one sentence. I'm very intentional when I say that, because I truly believe that if you can't explain something to a child, you don't understand it well enough. So I want you to be able to boil that statement down into one sentence and then build from there. But once you have that, you need to start sharing it. And how do you share that message? Again, the simplest thing I'm going to say is start asking for referrals. We don't do outbound calls as attorneys, right? One, you don't want to ruin your reputation. Two, it's prohibited by most local bars. So if not every local bar. So we don't do that, but there's nothing saying that you can't talk to your friends and families or colleagues or referral sources about referrals, right? And so when you're first starting out, I like to use this very simple script of, hey, I've been working on, and you tell them what you've been working on. Hey, I've been working on a one-liner for my business. I've been working on this phrase, whatever. I really value your opinion. And you can say that however you want. Recently I had a good business colleague, friend of mine, he's a business mentor like me for non-attorneys for other companies. And so I reached out to him. I was like, hey, I'm working on my one-liner. And I know he knows what a one-liner is because we have the same mentor. I'm like, hey, I'm working on my one-liner. You're really good at one-liners. Would you mind if I sent you mine and you give me some feedback? It was that simple. It was like one sentence, really quick. And of course he said yes, right? People like their egos being stroked. So if you tell someone that they are super awesome at something, and even if it's like, hey, you're just like my ideal client, I would love to see how my one-liner, what you think about it. Do you mind if I send it to you? Whatever. And then after they say yes or no, send it to them. If they say no, then don't send it to them. But if they say yes, send it to them. Most people will say yes, and then have a conversation about it. Now, some of these people may give you advice that you don't want to follow, and that's okay. Just like when I shared my one-liner for my law firm with lawyers today on Facebook, a lot of people gave me advice that's contrary to the trainings that I've learned. That's okay. I still thank them for it. I don't argue with them and tell them they're wrong. I just say thank you, and then I carry on the conversation. But thank them for that. If they have good feedback, obviously take it. I've improved my one-liner based off of that conversation today. But then I always follow up when you're starting off your business and you're trying to grow your firm. Then you just start off with, hey, do you know anybody that I could share this with? And often they will. You'll be blown away. I mean, it's probably like 20%, like often is relative here, but you'll be blown away with how many people be like, yeah, actually my friend just told me they're getting divorced. Or yeah, my friend just got pulled over for a DUI. I have a friend that's currently struggling with some immigration issues. Like you'll be blown away how many people will say yes to this. And it's super low confrontation, right? They could say, no, I don't. You're like, hey, no problem. If you ever know of anybody, just, think of me and end it at that. But start with those conversations there. If you're looking for places to have those conversations, like who should you share your message with? I always like to start with networking groups. I find, again, those are low confrontation things. And so like a Rotary or Chamber or like a BNI, the Business Networking International group, those are great ways to start. Sierra, one of my, the coaching client that went from 0 to 500,000 in her very first year of business. And when I say first year of business, I mean like she was sworn in as a lawyer, started her law firm fresh out of school, and that very first year did 500,000. So she knew nothing. She knew nothing about her practice area. She knew nothing about business. Like she was truly from scratch, right? And she had a hard time talking to people about her business. So I was like, hey, join BNI. Did she get a ton of business from BNI? I don't know if she did. I mean, enough to make it worth it, but not a ton. Ultimately, she did leave the BNI chapter that she was a part of, but it had a bunch of people in it. And so she went there, she took their trainings, she learned about how to talk about her business. But more importantly, we tried to schedule like every day when possible, her to sit down and talk to somebody about her business. And she got better and better at sharing the message of the problems that she's solving for people. And it was always that, right? At the end of these, when she was doing those and she was doing her sales calls and everything, at the end, I always tried to have her look through and say like, okay, what was the problem that they said they had? Did I have a solution, like a solution that I believed in for that problem? And did they value the solution? It was just a simple thing of what's the problem and could I solve it? And we went through that as often as possible, but she just started there. One of the most effective ways of doing this is to start talking to potential referral sources. So if you're a personal injury attorney, talk to a chiropractor. If you're a divorce attorney, talk to a marriage and family therapist or an abuse shelter or something like that. Talk to potential referral sources. Now there's an added layer of complexity here. When you're talking to a referral source, you are not talking to them about their client's problems. So if you're talking to a chiropractor as a personal injury attorney, you don't go to the chiropractor and say, hey, I am really awesome at helping, car accident victims get money. Because that's not the referral source's problem. Again, we're focusing on the problem of the person you're talking to. And so if you're talking to a referral source, ask them their problems. Recently, I was helping a coaching client who is a personal injury attorney, and he was talking to this chiropractor, and they were having a hard time getting paid timely with some certain things. And again, a personal injury is not my area of expertise, so I don't understand all of the specifics on this. But my buddy said, hey, that PIP coverage, and there's these things that I can do to ensure that the insurance company pays you quickly. If someone hires me, I will do A, B, and C to ensure that you get paid quickly and that you get paid as much as possible. And again, I don't know the specifics on that and how it works, but it was definitely the problem that this chiropractor was facing. And not surprisingly, that chiropractor then sent every single car accident person to my client, right? Because he solved the problem for the referral source. So there is a two-part thing there when you're talking to referral sources, you really need to understand their problems as well. And then solve their problem. And how you solve their problem is by getting clients, right? You've got to be able to link those two things together. And so I did the same thing with a local abuse shelter here. When I first started practicing, I had all the time in the world and nothing to do. And so I started a free clinic at the local abuse shelter. Every week I would go there and spend about 2 to 3 hours answering their clients' questions. I didn't know anything about family law at the time. So my first probably like 2 months of the clinic, it would be me sitting there and people would ask me questions and I'd say, I don't know. And I would write down their questions. And at the end, I'd be like, okay, are these the 4 questions you have? And they'd say yes. And I'd be like, sweet, I will look this up and I'll let you know tomorrow. And then the next day, I'd literally block off the next day on my calendar every single week. And I would just sit down and research all of their questions and I'd start sending them answers until I finally learned family law. That's how I learned it. But for the referral source, right? This abuse shelter, often what would happen is these women would come in and they wouldn't want to leave their spouse because they were afraid. They were afraid that their spouse was going to take away their kids, or that they'd have no money, or that they lose their house, or these things that their spouse had been telling them for years would happen. Now, you and I know that's not the case. We're experts. Anybody who's done anything in family law knows that, stay-at-home moms are going to get some sort of alimony and child support. They're probably going to be the primary caretaker of these kids, those types of things. But they didn't know that. So I told the referral source, I was like, hey, I'd love to come in and just talk to these women about their concerns. Completely free. I'll just answer their questions. And of course, that's super beneficial for them because often these abuse shelter, right? They're sitting there and they're like, man, we know that in order to get this person out of this abusive situation, they've got to leave. But until they feel empowered to leave, they're not going to do so. And so having me come in and do a free consultation was solving the abuse shelter's concern about empowerment for their clients. Where it was free, it was easy. Now, what happened is they then scheduled 6 to 8 people every single week for me to have a conversation with. And not surprisingly, a lot of those people hired me. Especially when I first started, I actually did a discount. So I did half of my hourly rate to anybody from this abuse shelter. So not surprisingly, they wanted to use me because I was the cheapest person in town for them as well. I picked up a ton of clients doing it. And that's okay, right? It is okay to solve people's problems and make money. That's what business is. And so just share this message with as many people as you can. Long-term, what you're going to do is market, right? You're going to use marketing. So you're going to use your website, social media, ads, et cetera, so that you can scale. What you'll notice, and this is when you know it's the right time to do marketing, is you don't have enough clients. And so you spend a ton of time talking to people about your services. And when you do that, you get clients, right? So you're going to spend a bunch of time doing that, and you're going to get a bunch of clients. And then you're going to have so many clients that you need to service them and make money. And you'll make some really good money for a while as you're doing that. And you'll stop doing all of these things that we just talked about because you have too much work. And then you'll make a bunch of money and you'll run out of clients and then you'll crash back down and you'll not be making money and you'll kind of ride this roller coaster. Every business goes through this roller coaster, especially as they're growing. But I find lawyers seem to struggle with this almost more than most because of the time intensity that it takes to get clients and the time intensity it takes to service their clients. And so when that starts happening to you, that's when you know it's time to scale. That's when you know it's time to start doing some of these income producing or some of these client generating activities that cost either time or someone else's money or your money or someone else's time instead of your own. And that's where really, optimizing your website, doing social media, from a beginner standpoint, what I would suggest focusing on is on Google My Business. If you Google your practice area, attorney near me, just do that and see what comes up. Almost always what's going to come up is at the very top, there's going to be some ads. We as humans have learned to not pay attention to ads. We know that someone's paying for that and we almost discredit the fact that someone's at the top because we just assume they paid for it. So they scroll past the ads and almost always the next thing is that Google My Business thing where it shows the top 3 businesses in your area. And that is almost always generated based off of how much you optimize your platform or your Google My Business profile and consistent Google reviews over time. 20 Google reviews today and then nothing for 5 weeks is worth less than 1 Google review a week. So consistent generating of Google reviews over time is going to be the next, that's kind of the bridge between paying for ads and those types of things it's a nice bridge where you can start getting those Google reviews over time. You'll start picking up clients through Google without spending a ton of money on it. From there, you're going to have to watch somebody else's presentation or talk to me one-on-one on how to do the advertising side of things. Because obviously there's quite a bit that goes into marketing. I can't cover all of marketing in 1 minute. But I just wanted you to understand that first start with sharing your message and start doing marketing when you start seeing the yo-yo. The biggest reason I say that is a lot of attorneys spend a ton of money on marketing and advertising and they get nothing back for it. Every time I've seen that happen, it's because they weren't clear on their message. And so the only way to become clear on your message is to share it over and over again and get better and better at it. So start with sharing your message and then market and advertise when you see the yo-yo. As a little bonus here, one of the things we did with Sierra that was super successful for her, it's worked for some people and not others, is we worked with a referral company. For her, it was Unbundled Attorney. That's one has been really good and really bad for different people. So I'm not suggesting them specifically, but with referral companies, you're going to get a ton of low cost, low quality conversations. And I word them that way on purpose. These are people who are saying they are interested in the service that you recommend, but they are low quality. And if you know a referral company that sends awesome, high quality referrals every single time, please let me know because I haven't met one yet. And I'm not saying that referral companies are the foundation of how to grow a business, but what I am saying is what you get with these referral companies is a lot of at-bats. And so for Sierra specifically, she was getting about 20 leads a week, and about 2 of those were people that she converted into clients. So it was literally 10%, a horrible conversion rate. But what that did is it gave her 20 opportunities a week to talk about her business, get better at sharing her message with people who were potentially interested in what she did. And she made enough money off of it that she could grow with that and then start using her money elsewhere to grow her business quickly. And so that's a little bonus. You don't have to do that, but it is definitely a way of speeding things up solely because you're having a lot of conversations. And that's why I even call them conversations. I don't even call them leads. They may call them leads, but for me, I find them almost as great opportunities for practice that seems to have at least a decent return on investment when you're starting out. So that's just a bonus. You don't have to do that, but it's something there. With the last couple of minutes, and if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We've got about 5 minutes left, so I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have. But I wanted to do a quick review. The 3 reasons you're not making enough money, and there's really just 3. And this is no matter what size you're at, whether you're trying to get to 250,000 or trying to get to 10 million, is you're either not solving big enough problems, you're not getting paid for the work that you're doing, or you're not helping enough people. And the more money you want to make, the more problems, the bigger problems you have to solve, and the more people you have to help. And you have to get paid all along the way. The getting paid is definitely part of this money-making part. But most of the time I focus on that because I want to make sure you're capitalizing on you're making enough money that as you scale, it's worth it. If you're not doing that, if you're not getting paid for the work that you're doing, then you seem to get to a point where you're busy, but you're not profitable. And so you've got to get paid to scale. And I've seen this at every size. I talked to someone just the other day who was generating $975,000 a month. So just shy of $1 million a month, but their expenses were $950,000 a month. So they were still profiting $25,000 a month. A lot of people would love a $25,000 a month profit, but that's a tight margin, and that's a scary margin because things go upside down at any point, and they could be $100,000 or $200,000 in debt overnight. Really scary margin, and it was all because of that middle thing, not getting paid. So there is one question here. It just says regarding sharing your message 5 times a day, can the marketing specialist have this task like on different social media platforms? And the answer is absolutely. When you're first starting out, I would suggest you do it just so that you hone the message. But the next step is definitely going to be to delegate that and automate it, right? Delegate it first. So again, you can practice delegating and learning how to do that. But from an efficiency standpoint, hopefully you'd want a lot of this automated. So you could have a Google ad that runs for indefinitely, right? That would be an automated way of sharing this message. But absolutely, as you're scaling, I would definitely delegate that. So that's a great question. Last thing on the summary side is just how do you fix these 3 problems? And it's focusing on the problem, the solution, and then the outcome, and then sharing your message 5 times a day. I wish there was something better than that. I wish I could tell you there's this secret formula that if you have this super awesome hook and you run this Google ad, that you'll make $1 million a year. Anybody who's telling you that is selling you something. But the truth is, to climb from the beginning, you've got to get really good at sharing your message and understanding people's problems. But that's the nice thing is that's it. A lot of my coaching clients that are first starting out that get to 250,000, they don't even have a website. Should you have a website? Yes, you should. But if you have to decide between making a website and talking to 5 people a day, I would tell you to talk to 5 people a day. And if you want to talk to 25 people a day, you'll grow way faster than if you talk to 5 people a day. But start with 5, start there. That's really all you need to get there, is understanding your message and talking to 5 people a day. With the very last thing here, right, is actions produce results. I love teaching things like this, but if you don't use it, it's worthless. There's no point in doing this. So you've got to take action. So I want you to, with the last 30 seconds that we have, commit to doing something, whether that's getting more clear on your message, whether it's talking to 5 people a day. I don't care what the something is, commit to doing something today. And then if you need help, I'd be happy to jump on a call with any of you for free. I put my direct email in here. I've never done this before in any presentation, but that's my direct email, chris@timefreedomlawyers.com. You can send me an email and I'd be happy to jump on one free call with you. I'm not going to jump on 100 free calls with you, right? But I'll jump on a free call with you and I'll help you implement anything that you learned today. And if you're a glutton for punishment and wanted to see this stuff in short form, I've had a really fun time trying to take things like this and boil it into 58 seconds or less in short form content. You can jump on my YouTube channel there. It's just @Chris Guyman, no periods or anything, just @Chris Guyman, and you can see this stuff for free there as well. So thank you all. We're right on 2:30. So we're going to wrap it up right here. But if you need anything, feel free to reach out. Thanks, guys.